Hello, my name is Daryl Wildberg, and I am a Jehovah's Witness in good standing. But this video is not approved by the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania, the legal entity that the government requires over the donations and legal decisions for the Jehovah's Witnesses. And it's not approved by the 8 faithful members of that governing body located there in Warwick, New York. And it's not approved by any local body of elders. See, I don't work for the elders, I don't work for the governing body, and I don't work for the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania. I work for Jesus Christ. He's my boss. There goes my black lab, by the way. So, in essence, this video was produced by me, not by the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania, nor by the governing body or any local body of elders. Again, I don't work for them. Now today, I'm going to do a response to Skim and Smicky. Kim and Mickey. A couple of apostates that are a real scare pair. And that Smurf moron that I've pumped out so many times that it's pitiful. Caught her lying about her being a Freemason and one of the anointed of the Jehovah's Witnesses. But I had made a mention that after reading the April 26, 1922 Golden Age magazine produced by the International Bible Students Association, now referred to as Jehovah's Witnesses, that they made, I don't want to really say a prediction, but they mentioned that one day Jehovah's Witnesses would be carrying a wireless telephone to the doors. A handheld wireless telephone. Now, after my research, I could find nobody that mentioned wireless telephones before April 26, 1922. They came up with this article about Nikola Tesla, and I'm going to go through that article because it says nothing about wireless telephone. It's not a thing. And down below, of course, I've got their YouTube site. And they use a 1909 Popular Mechanics article that was published from the New York Times. So, without further ado, I think I'll begin. And here it is. Nobody, I repeat, nobody but the Jehovah's Witnesses ever stated that one day we would carry handheld wireless telephones to the doors before 1922. At least upon information and belief, I believe that. And Tesla was not the first to speak of wireless waves. In fact, Tesla had nothing to do with it. Tesla was considered a whack job and died a pauper. J.P. Morgan, who had financed him on a tower that he built, finally determined that it was a stupid idea and it wouldn't work. In fact, most of Tesla's ideas were stupid. Not that he didn't have some ideas that were geniuses, because there's a thin line between a genius and an idiot. Now, the apostates really claim to Skim and Smicky's misinformation. Now, for the moronic apostates, let me reiterate what I stated. The Jehovah's Witnesses were the first ever to mention carrying handheld wireless telephones in the ministry, due to, no doubt, that Holy Spirit insight. Now, go back through the apostate video, and it's down listed below, and actually read the clips they posted. Or you can research Nikola Tesla. But you can see for yourself, neither Tesla nor anyone else except the Jehovah's Witnesses ever mentioned carrying wireless telephones prior to 1922. You can go to the timestamp of 2:39 of the Skim and Schmicky video and read it for yourself. Wireless telephones, right there in the article by the Golden Age. Now let me state that again for emphasis. Wireless telephones. Now there is nothing here about wireless telephones in their quote in their sites cited below. Nothing about wireless telephones. It turns out that the legendary inventor and electrical engineer Nikola Tesla, 1856 to 1943, predicted mobile phones in 1909. Now, that was the opinion of the current writer of the article that is addressed here in the Popular Mechanics. Popular Mechanics did not use that term, nor did they say that in the 1909 article. In an interview with the New York Times, published in Popular Mechanics, Tesla states that it will soon be possible, for instance, for a businessman in New York to dictate instructions and have them appear in type in London or elsewhere. He will be able to call from his desk and talk with any telephone subscriber in the world. It will only be necessary to carry an inexpensive instrument no bigger than a watch, which will enable its bearer to hear anywhere on sea or land for distances of thousands of miles. There's nothing about wireless telephone. In fact, he was referencing a wireless telegraph. Read the full Popular Mechanics article from 1909. There is not one single reference to a wireless telephone. In that excerpt from the article, not one reference. In fact, I invite you again, read it. Only this time, Skim and Schmicky, try opening your eyes. Tesla predicted wireless telegraphs, not wireless telephones. Hand-wired from the desk of a businessman. Now, show me one article where Tesla mentioned wireless telephones. Now, you apostates are all sheeple, flocking to Skim and Schmicky's propaganda, along with the Smurf moron. You guys get so fed up with them, you don't even check out what they say. Now, here is in all propaganda false information on Tesla. There is nothing about cell phones or wireless phones except the writer's opinion, current writer's opinion. And nothing, again, about wireless telephones. So let's go through that and find out what happened. Well, Scottish physicist James Clerk Maxwell first predicted the existence of radio waves in the 1860s. In 1886, German physicist Heinrich Rudolf Hertz, you remember that Hertz from megahertz and all this Hertz stuff, they named it after him. He demonstrated that rapid variations of electronic current could be projected even into space in the form of radio waves, similar to light waves and heat waves. In 1866, Malone Loomis, an American dentist, successfully demonstrated wireless telegraphy. Loomis was able to make a meter connected to a kite cause a meter connected to another kite to move. This marked the first known instance of wireless aerial communication. Tesla was 10 years old when this was done in 1866. But it was Guglielmo Marconi, an Italian inventor, who proved the feasibility of radio communication. He sent and received his first radio signal in Italy in 1895. In 1899, he flashed the first wireless signal across the English Channel, and 2 years later received the letter S, which was telegraphed from England to Newfoundland, which is now part of Canada. Now, this was the first successful transatlantic radio telegraph message. In addition to Marconi, two of his contemporaries, Nikola Tesla and Nathan Stubblefield, took out patents for wireless radio transmitters. Now, Nikola Tesla is now credited with being the first person to patent radio technology. He did not invent it or discover it. The Supreme Court overturned Marconi's patent in 1943 in favor of Tesla's, but Tesla was not the first person to have mentioned it or discovered it. Now, radio owes its development to two other inventions, the telegraph and the telephone. All three of these technologies are closely related, and radio technology actually began as wireless telegraphy. The term radio can refer to either the electronic appliance that we listen with or to the contents that plays from it, In any case, it all started with the discovery of radio waves, electromagnetic waves, that have the capacity to transmit music, speech, pictures, and other data invisibly through the air. Now, many devices work by using electromagnetic waves, including radios, microwaves, cordless phones, remote-controlled toys, televisions, and much, much more. And Tesla had nothing to do with any of those inventions. In 1908, a year before this Tesla thing came up, Professor Albert Einstein and the Oakland Transcontinental Area Telephone and Power Company claimed to have developed a wireless telephone. But they didn't call it that. They were accused of fraud and the charge was then dropped, but they do not seem to have produced or proceeded with any production of that phone. Now, beginning in 1918, the German railroad system tested wireless telephony on military trains between Berlin and Zossen. And in 1924, public trials started with telephone connection on trains between Berlin and Hamburg. In 1925, the company Zug Telephony AG was founded to supply train telephony equipment. And in 1926, the telephone service and trains of the Deutsche Reichsbahn and the German mail service on the route between Hamburg and Berlin was approved and offered to first-class travelers. Again, Tesla had nothing to do with the invention of the wireless systems or devices. Now, Carl Arnold drew of public use of mobile telephones. It was fiction. He anticipated the development of real-world mobile telephones. In 1906, the English caricaturist Louis Balmer published a cartoon in Punch magazine entitled Forecast for 1907, in which he showed a man and a woman in London's Hyde Park, each separately engaged in gambling and dating on wireless telephony equipment. And then in 1926, the artist Carl Arnold created a visionary cartoon about the use of mobile phones in the street in the picture Wireless Telephony, published in the German satirical magazine Simplicissimus. The Second World War made military use of the radio telephony links. Handheld radio transceivers have been available since the 1940s. Walkie-talkies, we call them. Mobile telephones for automobiles became available from some telephone companies in the 1940s. Early devices were bulky, consumed large amounts of power, and the network supported only a few simultaneous conversations. Modern cellular networks allow automatic and pervasive use of mobile phones for voice and data communications. In the United States, engineers from Bell Labs began work on a system to allow mobile users to place and receive telephone calls from automobiles, leading to the inauguration of mobile service on June 17, 1946, in St. Louis, Missouri. Shortly after, AT&T offered mobile telephone service. Now, in Russia, Leonid Kapriyanovich, an engineer from Moscow in 1957 and 1961, developed and presented a number of experimental pocket-sized communications radios. The weight of one model presented in 1961 was only 70 grams and could fit on a palm of your hand. However, in the USSR, the decision at first to develop the system of the automobile Altair phone was made. Now, in 1965, the Bulgarian company Radio Electronica presented a mobile automatic phone combined with base station at the Inforga 65 International Exhibition in Moscow. Solutions of this phone were based on a system developed by Leonid Kapriyanovich. One base station connected to one telephone wireline could serve up to 15 customers. So who came up with the wireless telephone first? Who did it first? Well, in 1973, Dr. Martin Cooper was the first to demonstrate a handheld cellular telephone. It had a battery, a radio, and a microcompressor, a mini computer. New Yorkers gaped at amazement when they saw Cooper making a phone call on the street. But the invention was only possible because back in 1800, Alessandro Volta had invented a reliable battery. In addition, the telephone had been developed by 1876, the radio by 1895, and the computer by 1946. But the wireless was not really invented until the microcompressor in 1971 made cell phones possible. Nevertheless, we might ask, was communication with sophisticated devices really new? Well, once again, Tesla had nothing to do with the wireless telephone. And upon information and belief, the Jehovah's Witnesses mentioned the wireless telephones before anyone else. Now, the following excerpt was part of an article published by the International Bible Students Association, currently referred to as Jehovah's Witnesses, on April 26, 1922 in the Golden Age, page 468. You can research it. And I quote from that magazine. Someday each human individual may carry in his vest pocket his own private wireless telephone. First mention of that. Through which he can receive reliable news from various parts of the earth and communicate at will with private individuals, wherever they may be. In conclusion, the telephone was invented in 1876, the radio by 1895, the computer by 1946, and finally the microcompressor that made the wireless telephones, or cell phones, smartphones possible in 1971. And Nikola Tesla had nothing to do with any of them. He was a nutcase. On April 1st, 1880, the world's first wireless telephone call was made, but it was not on a wireless telephone. And it was made on Bell and Tainter's photophone, distant precursor to fiber optic communications. From the Franklin School in Washington, D.C. to the window of the Bell Laboratory, 213 meters away. I don't know how far that is, 100 some miles. But the device was not a wireless telephone, nor was it called such. In fact, I could not find a single reference to a wireless telephone prior to the April 26, 1922 Golden Age magazine on page 468. Now, if someone has found the wireless telephone mentioned before April 26, 1922, please email me at redeemguy1@yahoo.com. It's down below. At any rate, and I'm going to say this again for the idiots out there that didn't get it the first time, upon information and belief, the Jehovah's Witnesses made the first reference to a wireless telephone on April 26, 1922 in the Golden Age magazine on page 468. And guess what? Show me anything that's different. And Nikola Tesla had nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with the cell phone. Not even on the same plane as the cell phone, whatever he did. And like I said, he died a pauper because J.P. Morgan pulled the funds. J.P. Morgan knew his idea was stupid. So there you have it, folks. Plain, simple. There's nothing before 1922, no mention of a wireless telephone. Show me.